In the late 1990s, I was 9 years old and counted the days until Christmas. Not for the magic of the night, nor for the presents, which were always few and carefully chosen, but because December 25th was the only day of the year when I could debut a new piece of clothing. My grandmother Akiko used to say, "What is special loses its meaning when it becomes routine, Naomi-chan." But that has changed, has it not? Now, every Tuesday is a pretext for a new dress. Every Friday is an excuse for another shoe, and each emotion becomes a click in the shopping cart. Last week, I watched the documentary Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy on Netflix, and I confess it was like taking a bucket of cold water, but not the refreshing water of a spring morning. It was like the naked truth about where our consumption impulses are leading the world. And no, I will not pretend that we are all innocent victims of marketing. I have worked with design for years. I know very well how these strategies work, because I myself have created some of them. If you also feel that you need a break from this desperate race for things that promise happiness, but deliver only more disorder, subscribe to the channel and leave that like. Especially if you want to learn about elegant minimalism and good living in a way that works in real life, not just on Instagram. The day I discovered where our clothes go to die, I need to tell you something that completely changed my perspective about my own relationship with clothes. In 2008, when I lost almost everything in the financial crisis, I consoled myself by buying. I bought mainly online. How practical, right? One click and ready. The dopamine arrived along with the little package the next day. But a year later, working as a consultant for a design company, I needed to visit a warehouse of a large retailer. It was like a city inside a shed. People running, boxes coming and going, conveyor belts that never stopped. The employee who guided me said something that still echoes in my head. Every second you blink, someone is clicking buy somewhere in the world. It was not just a casual observation. It was real data. Every hour, 2.5 million shoes are produced globally, but I recently discovered that 13 million cell phones are discarded daily around the world. 13 million per day. But what impacted me most in the documentary was discovering where our donated clothes go when they no longer serve us. The Kantamanto market, in Ghana, receives more than 15 million pieces of used clothing per week. For you to have an idea, Ghana has 30 million inhabitants. That is 15 million pieces of clothing arriving every week for 30 million people. And here comes the part that left me speechless. Approximately 40% of these clothes end up as trash. They are not sold. They are not used. They become trash. Up to 500,000 clothing items from the Kantamanto market end up in open-air dumps every week. Do you want to know where these clothes end up? On the beaches of Accra, clogging sewers, burning in the open air, releasing toxins into the air. The Coral Lagoon, which was once a source of livelihood and recreation for the residents of Accra, today is considered one of the most polluted in the world, with mountains of discarded clothes along its shores. And this lagoon flows into the ocean. The engineering of temptation, how we are programmed to buy. Have you ever stopped to think why it is so difficult to resist that add to cart? It is not coincidence. It is not lack of willpower. It is the result of billions of dollars invested in behavioral research to understand exactly which button to press in your mind. Marin Costa, former Amazon user experience designer and one of the inventors of one-click purchase, appears in the documentary explaining the enormous amount of science behind the Amazon shopping experience. She reveals how each element of the interface is tested and optimized to make impulse purchases super easy and fast. Think about Amazon. Machine learning algorithms analyze vast amounts of data about our consumption behavior to predict our purchasing needs. This predictive power allows companies to target consumers with frighteningly accurate recommendations, increasing the likelihood of impulse purchases. I remember a conversation I had with a fashion editor friend in 2019. She told me she had bought 5 black dresses in the same month, all slightly different. When I questioned her, she said, "I was not planning it, but every time I opened Instagram, a perfect black dress appeared for me. It was as if they knew exactly what I wanted before I even knew. And they know. Because every click, Every pause, every add to wish list feeds algorithms that become increasingly efficient at selling us things we did not even know we wanted. The psychology behind the click. When I began studying the patterns behind our purchasing habits, I realized something fascinating and disturbing at the same time. 90% of the things we think we need, we simply do not need. It is a high percentage, I know, but think with me. How many times have you bought something on impulse, used it once or twice, and then forgot you had it? I remember an architect friend I met in 2015. She had a closet that looked more like a department store, but every morning she stood in front of the wardrobe saying she had nothing to wear. One day she told me, embarrassed, that she had bought 3 identical black coats in the same month. 3 identical in the same month. I thought I had lost the first one, she said. Then I thought the second one was not exactly what I wanted. On the third, I simply clicked without thinking. This is not a memory problem. It is the result of a very well-architected system to keep us buying. Corporations are determined to increase profits, convincing consumers repeatedly to separate from their money, and they use data about our behavior to create algorithms that know exactly which product to show, when to show it, and how to present it so that it becomes irresistible. Think about McDonald's, for example. Have you ever noticed how self-service menus always push combos? The cheapest items are hidden at the end, and the system is programmed so that you always feel you are saving by buying more. You enter wanting just a drink and leave with a complete combo. The scandal that exposed planned obsolescence. In 2017, something interesting happened in the technology world. iPhone users began to notice that their phones became slower after system updates. For more than a year, people complained, but Apple denied any problem. Until in December 2017, developers of the Geekbench tool proved that Apple was deliberately slowing down older iPhones. What became known as Batterygate revealed that Apple was reducing the performance of iPhone 6, 6S, SE, 7, and 7 Plus when their batteries began to degrade. The company claimed it was to prevent the devices from shutting down unexpectedly, but it had not informed users about this. The result? Apple was forced to pay more than $613 million in fines and settlements in the United States and other countries. In March 2020, it agreed to pay at least $25 for each affected American user, and some received up to $92 back. In Canada, the payment was up to 14.4 million Canadian dollars. But here is what impresses me most. This was not an isolated case. It was just the moment when they managed to catch one of the world's largest corporations doing exactly what we suspected they all do, designing products to fail or become obsolete. The truth about Amazon's garbage. Let us talk about numbers that will shock you. Amazon generated 709 million pounds of plastic packaging globally in 2021. For you to visualize, if all this plastic were converted into plastic air pillows and placed side by side, it would go around the world more than 800 times. And do you know what happens to this plastic? It is estimated that 26 million pounds of Amazon's plastic packaging from 2021 will eventually end up in the world's oceans, rivers, and other aquatic ecosystems. That is about 22 million pounds of Amazon's plastic garbage from just 2022 that will end up in the oceans. The irony is that Amazon promotes recycling programs, placing that chasing arrows symbol on packages with a link about how to recycle. But the reality is brutal. Oceana investigated 186 collection points in the United States and United Kingdom that Amazon promotes on its website, and discovered that at least 41% of them do not even accept Amazon's plastic packaging. It is pure greenwashing. In the United States, only 5% of plastic is actually recycled, even though people diligently fill their blue bins. Plastic is much more likely to end up in an incinerator, in a landfill, or be shipped abroad so that other countries deal with our mess. A former employee who worked in one of Amazon's warehouses told me, off the record, that during Black Friday 2022, she saw mountains of packaging being thrown away because employees did not have time to optimize packaging. It was a small product in a huge box with a lot of plastic. And that multiplied by millions of orders, she said. The 5 objects ritual and the silent revolution. After the 2008 crisis, when I returned from Japan with only 2 suitcases, I developed what I call the 5 objects ritual. In each environment of my house, I choose only 5 items that carry utility, beauty, or personal history. No more than that. Does it seem restrictive? At first, yes. But then you discover something wonderful. When you have only 5 special objects on a table, each one of them can breathe. Each one has space to be appreciated. It is like the difference between a symphony and noise. In the symphony, each note has its place and its moment. On my walnut dining table, which I bought in 2010 and is one of the few things that survived the crisis, I have only 5 items: a vase with seasonal flowers, an artisanal candle, my calligraphy notebook, a black stone that my grandfather Takeshi gave me before he died, and a porcelain cup for afternoon tea. 5 objects, each one with purpose, each one with soul. Compare this to the table of a person I know, a very successful fashion editor, who has 47 decorative objects on a single coffee table. 47. She can no longer see any of them. They have become just visual noise. The cruel mathematics of consumption. Here is an account that made me rethink everything. Only 10% of donated secondhand clothes are actually resold. 10%. The rest? A small percentage is transformed into insulation or stuffing for car seats, but most is sent to the global south, to places like Ghana. When you donate that blouse you wore twice, thinking you are doing a good deed, there is a 90% chance that it will end up in a dump in Accra, contributing to the pollution of beaches and rivers of a country you probably cannot even locate on the map. This is not your fault, individually, but it is our responsibility, collectively. As Liz Ricketts, sustainable fashion activist, said, "We need to go to the root of this issue, which is a legacy of colonialism. Global North countries need to pay ecological reparations to clean up the mess that was made." The 3 questions that changed my life. Since 2008, before any purchase, I ask 3 questions. First, do I really need this, or do I just want it because it is in front of me? The difference between necessity and desire is more subtle than we imagine. Necessity solves a real problem. Desire, most of the time, just distracts from an emotional problem. Second, if I buy this, what will I discard? Because space, physical and mental, is finite. If something new enters, something old needs to leave. And if you cannot think of what will leave, maybe it is because what is entering is not that necessary. Third, a year from now, will I still remember that I bought this? If the answer is no, it is a strong indication that it is an impulse, not a necessity. These 3 questions saved me from hundreds, probably thousands, of unnecessary purchases. And they gave me something much more valuable: time. Time that I used to spend looking for lost things, organizing excesses, or working to pay for things I did not use. But let me tell you about the 30-day system that revolutionized my relationship with consumption. When I want to buy something that is not essential, I write it down on a list with the date. If after 30 days I still want that item and still remember it, maybe it is a conscious purchase. In 2023, out of 47 items I wrote down on this list, I bought only 3. The other 44 were passing desires that dissolved in time. Imagine if I had bought them all. The mental confusion, the wasted money, the space occupied by things I did not even remember I wanted anymore. The cruel mathematics of corporate waste. I will show you numbers that completely changed how I see companies that claim to care about sustainability. Amazon claims to have reduced the average packaging weight per shipment by 43% since 2015, avoiding 3 million metric tons of packaging material. Sounds impressive, does it not? But here is what they do not talk about. Meanwhile, they drastically increased the total volume of shipments. It is like saying that each individual cigarette has less nicotine, but you are smoking 3 packs a day instead of 1. The percentage reduction is irrelevant when the absolute volume explodes. In 2021, Amazon alone was responsible for 3.8 billion pounds of plastic packaging waste from e-commerce. For you to understand the scale, this is equivalent to the weight of approximately 70,000 orcas. And this plastic does not disappear. If it were transformed into plastic air pillows, It would be enough to circle the planet more than 200 times. A former employee of a recycling company that partners with collection programs confessed to me, "All the claims companies make are just greenwashing. Recycling has failed." She was right. In the United States, only 5% of plastic is actually recycled, even though most people diligently fill their blue bins. The human cost of our convenience. But perhaps what impacts me most is the human cost of this obsession with convenience. In the Contamanto market in Ghana, more than 30,000 people work. Traders who wake up at 4 in the morning to open bales of used clothes from the West, hoping to find something they can sell. Liz Ricketts, from the OR Foundation, who works directly with these communities, explains, "This is not just an environmental crisis, it is a financial crisis for everyone who works in Contamanto. Because the clothes are so many and of such low quality, people simply cannot get their money back and basically operate in a debt cycle. For every 3 pieces sold in Contamanto, 2 become trash. More than half of our clothes sent to Accra go to landfills. And what we call donation becomes an environmental nightmare for people living on the other side of the world. The irony is cruel. We, who buy out of boredom, anxiety, impulse, end up exporting our lack of emotional control as an environmental problem to countries that do not have infrastructure to deal with our excesses. When marketing disguises itself as sustainability, I cannot talk about conscious consumption without addressing one of the most sophisticated manipulations of today, greenwashing. Companies have discovered that we can continue buying compulsively as long as we feel we are saving the planet. Amazon, for example, promotes its Amazon Second Chance program for recycling, while continuing to produce billions of pounds of plastic waste. It is like offering a glass of water while your house is on fire. Brands like H&M launch sustainable lines, representing less than 1% of total production, while continuing to launch new collections every week. It is equivalent to a person smoking 3 packs a day, but celebrating because one of the cigarettes is organic. Recently, a lawyer friend showed me marketing emails she received from a famous fast fashion brand. In 1 week, she received 12 emails promoting urgency. Last 6 hours. Only today. Limited stock. 12 emails in 7 days, creating artificial scarcity for products that are produced by the millions. The silent revolution of enough. But not everything is bad news. There is a silent revolution happening. People who are discovering that freedom is not being able to buy everything, but not needing almost anything. My son Kenji taught me a precious lesson last year. He was saving for a new laptop for college, and I asked why he did not just buy a cheaper one to hold while he saved money. He replied, "Mom, if I buy any laptop now, I will spend twice. And besides, waiting makes me value more when I finally get what I really want." Kenji was applying without knowing the Japanese principle of modanai, lamenting the waste of resources. Waiting was not deprivation, it was curation. It was choosing the essential instead of the convenient. The difference between abundance and accumulation. There is a subtle but fundamental difference between living in abundance and living in accumulation. Abundance is having access to what you need when you need it. Accumulation is having so much that you lose the ability to find and appreciate anything. I have a neighbor who owns 47 pairs of shoes. 47. But she uses the same 3 pairs always. It is not abundance to have 47 options if you can only mentally process 3. It is waste disguised as status. Compare this to my routine. 5 pairs of shoes, each with specific purpose. 1 for work, 1 for exercise, 1 for formal occasions, 1 for daily use, and 1 for travel. 5 pairs that I know intimately, take good care of, and use regularly. Each pair has its function, its season, its story. When you have fewer things, you can have better things. When you stop chasing quantity, you can invest in quality. It is simple mathematics. The same budget divided by fewer items results in better items. The quarterly review ritual. Every 3 months, I do what I call the review ritual. It is a solemn, almost sacred moment where I review each category of belongings in my house. It is not cleaning, it is life curation. I sit at the walnut table with a cup of bancha tea and go through each environment of the house. In the kitchen, I evaluate if I still use all the utensils. In the closet, I see if any clothing went 3 months without being used. In the office, I question if each book still serves me. The criterion is simple: utility, beauty, or personal meaning. If an object does not fit into at least one of these categories, it does not deserve space in my life. And space, physical and mental, is the most precious asset we have. This ritual is not about perfection or rigidity. It is about intention. It is about creating a home that breathes, where each object has purpose and each environment has soul. It is about discovering that when you take good care of the little becomes much. During my last review, in December, I encountered a curious situation. I had an expensive winter coat, of good quality, that I had not used even once during the year. Why? Because I always preferred the same cashmere cardigan I received from my grandmother Akiko. The coat met the quality criterion, but failed the emotional connection criterion. I donated the coat to a local institution that helps women in professional transition. Now it will serve someone who needs to project confidence in a job interview, instead of occupying space in my closet as a symbol of poorly spent money. The day my mother understood. In 2012, my mother, a brilliant businesswoman in the real estate sector, but who was always obsessed with accumulation, got sick. During the months of treatment, she stayed at my grandmother Akiko's house, who had moved here to help. My mother, accustomed to crowded closets and houses full of objects, suddenly found herself in an environment where each object had purpose. Grandmother Akiko cooked with only 6 kitchen utensils. She had 4 towels, 7 pieces of clothing for the week, and she was happy. More than happy. She was serene. "Naomi," my mother told me one day, "your grandmother has fewer things than I do, but her house seems richer than mine." And she was right. It is not about having less. It is about having enough of what really matters. The illusion of convenience. The documentary Buy Now: The Shopping Conspiracy exposes the tricks that brands use to keep their customers consuming, and the real impact this has on our lives and the world. One of the most perverse tactics is the illusion of convenience. One click and done. But have you ever stopped to think about what happens after that click? Someone, in some warehouse, has to run to get your product. Someone has to pack it. Someone has to drive a truck, often for hours, to deliver it to your door. And all this for a product you might use once and then forget. True convenience is not having everything at the reach of a click. True convenience is not needing everything that is at the reach of a click. The luxury of time and the economy of attention. My son Kenji, who is in college studying civil engineering, told me something I consider profound. "Mom, my friends spend weekends at the mall, or buying online, or organizing the things they bought. I spend weekends reading, talking, or simply being. Who has more free time?" He is right. Minimalism gave me the most expensive luxury in the world: time. Time to read an entire book on a Sunday. Time to prepare afternoon tea without rush. Time to sit on the porch and do absolutely nothing and not feel guilty about it. Because when you have fewer things to take care of, you have more life to live. When you stop spending weekends organizing excesses, you gain weekends to live experiences. When you do not need to work overtime to pay for things you do not use, you gain hours to be present in your own life. But there is another aspect we rarely discuss: the economy of attention. Each object in your house competes for your mental attention. Each promotional email on your phone is an interruption to your focus. Each unnecessary decision about what to wear, what to buy, where to store, is wasted cognitive energy. In Japan, there is a concept called ma, the meaningful space between things. It is not just empty space. It is intentional space that allows each element to breathe and be appreciated. When we apply this to modern life, we discover that the space between our belongings, between our commitments, between our purchases, is where life really happens. The promotion trap and the myth of economy. I will tell you about a psychological trap that cost me a lot of money before I understood the game. It is what I call promotion syndrome. Buying things you do not need because they are cheap, thinking you are saving money. A college friend, a brilliant engineer, proudly showed me her achievement at a clearance sale. She had bought 12 blouses because they were very cheap. When I calculated how much she had spent, The amount would buy 3 excellent quality blouses that would last years. But she felt smart because she had saved on each individual piece. This is the perverse mathematics of consumerism, making you feel smart for spending money on unnecessary things. It is like celebrating having bought 10 books for 50 rays when you only have time to read 2 books per year. The discount becomes disguised loss. Companies know this. That is why they create events like Black Friday, where they sell the illusion of urgency for products that will be available all year. That is why they send 12 emails per week creating artificial scarcity for products produced by the millions. During the pandemic, a curious situation opened my eyes. With stores closed, many people discovered they had enough clothes for years. They discovered they had cleaning products stocked for months. They discovered that the necessity to constantly buy was, in fact, a habit that could be broken. The myth of convenience and the real cost of speed. Practicality became the magic word that justifies any excess. Ready food because it is practical. Disposable clothes because it is convenient. New electronics every year because it is easier than fixing. But I will ask you an uncomfortable question. Practical for whom? Convenient for whom? Because it is certainly not practical for people who work 16 hours a day in warehouses to deliver your product same day. It is not convenient for communities that receive our electronic waste. It is not easy for ecosystems that deal with our disposable packaging. True convenience would be not needing so much stuff. True practicality would be having products that lasted decades. True ease would be not having to make 50 purchasing decisions per week. When I was a child, in the 80s, people bought clothes twice a year. At the beginning of winter and at the beginning of summer. They bought appliances and expected them to last 15 years. They bought a car and kept it for a decade. It was not inconvenient. It was normal. The fashion industry convinced us that we need new clothes every season, when the only thing that changes in seasons is marketing. The sun was not born different. Our perception of what is necessary was reprogrammed. The wisdom of objects that age. In Japanese culture, there is special reverence for objects that carry the marks of time. A ceramic bowl cracked and repaired with gold, kintsugi, is not seen as defective, but as more beautiful for having a story. This is the opposite of the disposable culture that surrounds us. We learn to see any sign of use as old, and anything old as outdated. But there is profound wisdom in objects that age with us. My walnut dining table, which I bought in 2010, has some marks. A small wine stain from a special night with friends. An almost imperceptible scratch from when Kenji did homework there. These imperfections do not diminish the table's value. They tell the story of our life together. Compare this to fast furniture that is designed to look perfect for 6 months and then be replaced. There is no time to create memories, no opportunity to develop attachment. It is disposable furniture for disposable lives. When you invest in quality objects and allow them to age with you, something magical happens. They become unique. Your leather bag that molded perfectly to your routine. Your cotton pajamas that became softer with each wash. Your shoes that adapted to the shape of your feet. These objects cannot be replaced by equivalents because they carry something money cannot buy: shared time and history. The political power of not buying. There is a political aspect to minimalism that we rarely discuss. Each purchase is a vote. When you buy from companies that exploit child labor, you are voting for that to continue. When you buy products with planned obsolescence, you are financing this practice. When you buy fast fashion, you are contributing to Ghana continuing to be the world's textile waste dump. But the inverse is also true. Each purchase you do not make is a vote against the system. Each product you use until the end of its useful life is a silent protest against planned obsolescence. Each time you repair instead of discard, you are practicing resistance. The documentary shows how companies spend billions studying our behavior to make us buy more. They have teams of psychologists, neuroscientists, and behavioral designers working 24 hours to discover our weak points. But they have a weak point. They depend on our cooperation. The moment we understand the game and refuse to play, the whole system begins to crumble. That is why there is so much fear when sales decrease. That is why there is so much urgency to convince us that The economy needs our consumption. The economy does need it, yes, but conscious consumption, not compulsive consumption. It needs people who buy less, but buy better, who value quality over quantity, durability over novelty, purpose over impulse. The revolution begins in the refrigerator. I will propose a simple exercise that can completely change your perspective on consumption. Open your refrigerator and observe. What do you see? Expired products? Forgotten leftovers? Half packages you bought just in case? Your refrigerator is a microcosm of your consumption habits. If it is full of things you do not eat, organized any old way, probably your entire house reflects the same pattern. If you buy food on impulse at the supermarket, you probably buy clothes on impulse online. After the 2008 crisis, when I had to rethink everything, I started applying minimalism first in the kitchen. I began buying only what I knew I would consume in the week. I eliminated processed products that stayed on shelves for months. I reduced to 25 to 27 essential items in the pantry. The result was surprising. Not only did I save money, but I started eating better. When you have fewer options, you make more conscious choices. When you plan meals, you waste less. When you know your ingredients, you respect them more. And this expanded to other areas of life. If I could live well with 25 items in the pantry, why did I need 200 beauty products? If I could plan meals for the week, why could I not plan clothes for the season? The refrigerator taught me that abundance is not having many options, but having the right options. That variety is not having 50 types of sauce, but knowing how to make 10 delicious dishes with simple ingredients. That practicality is not having ready food, but having fresh ingredients that transform into nutritious meals. The art of slowing down in an accelerated world. We live in an era where busy became a status symbol, where rushed is the default answer to "how are you?", where having a packed schedule is confused with having a full life. But there is a direct relationship between the speed of our life and the amount of things we accumulate. When you are always running, you make quick and bad decisions. You buy for convenience, not consciousness. You choose the disposable because you do not have time to care for the durable. You accumulate objects because you do not have time to decide what you really need. Minimalism forced me to slow down, and slowing down allowed me to make better choices. When you stop to question, why am I buying this? You frequently discover you do not have a good answer. When you stop to evaluate, where will I use this? You often realize you do not have a real plan. My grandmother Akiko had a ritual that I adopted. Every Friday, she set aside an hour to organize the week's finances. Not just to see expenses, but to reflect on each purchase. Why did I buy this? Did this bring me closer to or further from my goals? If I had this information on Monday, would I have made the same choice? This ritual taught me that financial consciousness is life consciousness, that controlling expenses is controlling impulses, that planning purchases is planning the future, that questioning needs is questioning values. But it also taught me something deeper, that there is luxury in having time to reflect, that there is elegance in making pause decisions, that there is power in not being a slave to your own impulses. The legacy we leave. Before finishing, I want to talk about something that radically changed my perspective on consumption, thinking about the legacy I leave, not just for Kenji, but for the world. When I die, what will happen to all my things? If I had a house full of objects I bought on impulse, someone would have to deal with that mess. If I had closets full of clothes I wore twice, someone would have to decide what to do with them. If I had a garage full of things I might need someday, someone would have to discard my accumulation. But if I live with intention, if I carefully choose what I bring into my life, if I completely use what I own, my legacy will be different. It will be a house that breathes, objects that have history, choices that make sense. Kenji has already told me that when he visits friends whose houses are cluttered with things, he feels anxious. It seems like the things are screaming for attention, he said. In our house, it is silent. Each object has its place and its purpose. That is the legacy I want to leave. Not just organized things, but a way of living that makes sense. A demonstration that it is possible to be happy with less, that it is possible to choose quality over quantity, that it is possible to live with elegance without excess. Because in the end, no one remembers our purchases. No one counts how many bags we had or how many shoes we owned. People remember how we felt in our own skin, how we treated our home, how we chose to live. And I choose to live with less rush, more intention, and much more awareness of the impact my choices have on the world. The difference between enough and too much. The line between enough and too much is more subtle than it seems. But once you find it, your life changes completely. Enough is when you have everything you need to live well, with elegance, and there is still space, literal and metaphorical, to breathe. Too much is when you have so much that you lose the ability to appreciate anything individually, when you can no longer find your favorite things because they are lost among all the others. When you work to pay for things you do not even remember you have. I have 5 pairs of shoes. 5. Each one with a specific purpose. One for work, one for exercise, one for formal occasions, one for daily use, and one for travel. 5 pairs that I know, care for, and use regularly. Compare this to the woman I met at a lecture last year, who had 63 pairs of shoes and told me, "I only use the same 3 pairs always." 63 pairs to use 3. That is not abundance. It is accumulation disguised as success. The revolution begins in your house. You do not need to be radical. You do not need to throw everything away tomorrow and live like a monk. The minimalism revolution is silent, gradual, and elegant. Start with one environment. Choose 5 objects that really matter. Store the rest. Live a week like this. If you do not miss anything, consider donating what you stored. Practice the 30-day waiting system before non-essential purchases. If after 30 days you still want that item and still remember it, maybe it is a conscious purchase. And whenever you feel like buying something out of emotion, sadness, anxiety, boredom, pause, breathe, make tea. The emotion will pass. The unnecessary object, if you buy it, will stay. The end that is a beginning. Minimalism is not about having less. It is about having enough of what really matters. It is about discovering that freedom is not being able to buy everything, but not needing almost anything. It is about understanding that true luxury is not in the things you have, but in the time and peace you gain when you stop chasing things that do not bring real happiness. The documentary, Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy exposes an uncomfortable truth. We are part of a system that transformed consumption into socially accepted addiction. But the beauty is in realizing that recognizing the problem is the first step to changing it. I am not asking you to get rid of everything and live like a monk. I am suggesting that you question before buying, that you value before discarding, that you choose quality over quantity, intention over impulse. Each product you do not buy on impulse is a vote against this system that transforms people into consuming machines and entire countries into garbage dumps. Each time you use something until the end of its useful life, you are practicing elegant resistance against planned obsolescence. When you stop buying to fill emotional voids, you discover that these voids can be filled with things money cannot buy: quality time, deep relationships, moments of contemplation, the satisfaction of taking good care of what you already have. True abundance is not in having access to everything, but in deeply appreciating what you chose to have. It is about transforming your house into a sanctuary instead of a warehouse, your life into careful curation instead of a desperate race for more. If this video made you rethink at least one purchase, if it inspired you to question at least one habit, then my work here is done. Subscribe to the channel if you want to continue this conversation about living with more intention and less rush. And leave a like if you believe we can live better with less, but living much more. Before I say goodbye, I want you to answer a question in the comments if you want less, but with purpose. Do you agree with this approach? Tell me about your experience with conscious consumption. Until next time, and remember, elegance is when you remove, not when you add.